Charlie Watts, the legendary drummer of the Rolling Stones, a man known for his elegance, precision, and unwavering loyalty to his craft. Watts left behind more than just music when he passed. He left a story etched into every corner of his life, from his abandoned home to his vast fortune, and the bittersweet legacy of a life well lived. This house, now eerily quiet, was once alive with the subtle rhythm of his presence. While his bandmates were often associated with the wild antics of rock and roll, Charlie was different. He was the calm and the chaos, the quiet force behind one of the greatest bands in history. But even legends face the inevitable. And in 2021, the music world was shaken by the news of his passing. His death marked the end of an era, leaving behind not only a grieving family and millions of fans, but also a legacy that continues to inspire. Yet behind the polished public image and timeless music, there are pieces of Charlie Watts' life that remain unknown to many. His family life, his passions beyond music, and the mysteries surrounding the house he left behind all tell a story far more complex than the man we saw on stage. And then there's the fortune, an enormous wealth built from decades of global success, now a reminder of his incredible career and the life he built away from the spotlight. In this video, we'll uncover the hidden layers of Charlie Watts' life. We'll explore the hauntingly beautiful house he once called home, dive into his journey as a quiet rock star, and examine the deep love he had for his family. We'll also touch on the heartache that came with his passing and the remarkable fortune he left behind. Stick around as we reveal the story of a man who let his music speak louder than his words. A story filled with rhythm, love, and the bittersweet echoes of a life that shaped generations. You won't want to miss what we uncover. Before Charlie Watts became the steady heartbeat of the Rolling Stones, he was a quiet boy with a passion for rhythm, born into a modest family in post-war London. On June 2, 1941, in the small suburb of Kingsbury, Charlie was brought into a world still grappling with the aftermath of World War II. His father, Charles, was a lorry driver, and his mother, Lillian, was a homemaker. Life was simple, and resources were scarce, but there was no shortage of love and encouragement in their home. Charlie's early years were shaped by his fascination with sound. As a child, he would sit for hours, captivated by the swing and bounce of jazz records playing on the family's old gramophone. He wasn't drawn to the loud, brassy sections of the music. It was the subtle rhythm of the drums that spoke to him, the steady beat that gave the music its soul. Even then, Charlie didn't crave the spotlight. He admired the way the drummer quietly kept the entire band in sync. In school, Charlie was reserved but creative. He showed a natural talent for drawing and would spend his free time sketching cartoons of his favorite musician. His dream back then wasn't to be a rock star, but to become a graphic designer. That's what he planned for his future, a career behind the scenes, creating art rather than being at the center of it. But everything changed when Charlie received his first drum kit as a teenager. It wasn't anything fancy, just a basic kit his parents saved up for. But to Charlie, it was everything. He would spend countless hours practicing in his small bedroom, often to the annoyance of his neighbors. He wasn't interested in being flashy or loud. He focused on precision and timing, determined to perfect the art of rhythm. Charlie's love for jazz grew stronger during his teenage years, and he idolized drummers like Max Roach and Elvin Jones, who inspired him to push his skills even further. While his friends dreamed of being lead singers or guitarists, Charlie was content staying in the background, letting his music do the talking. It was this humility and dedication that would later set him apart in a world where rock stars were often larger-than-life personalities. After high school, Charlie pursued his passion for art and studied graphic design at the Harrow School of Art. By day, he worked as a graphic designer for an advertising company. But by night, he played drums in local jazz bands around London. His dual life as a drummer and designer reflected his practical mindset. He loved music, but he didn't yet see it as a viable career. In 1962, Charlie's life took an unexpected turn when he was approached by a fledgling blues band looking for a drummer. The band, then called the Rolling Stones, was led by Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and Brian Jones. At first, Charlie was hesitant. He wasn't a fan of rock and roll. His heart belonged to jazz, but the group's passion for American blues intrigued him. After some convincing, Charlie agreed to join them, though he kept his day job as a designer, just in case the band didn't work out. What followed was a whirlwind. By 1963, the Rolling Stones had begun to gain traction, and Charlie found himself at the center of a musical revolution. His drumming style, heavily influenced by jazz, brought a unique groove to the band's sound. He wasn't just keeping time, he was creating the foundation for some of the most iconic songs in rock history. Charlie's reserved nature stood out against the wild energy of his bandmates. While Mick and Keith thrived on the chaos of fame, Charlie remained grounded. He married his longtime love, Shirley Ann Shepherd, in 1964, and the couple's relationship became a cornerstone of his life. Unlike many rock stars of his time, Charlie preferred a quiet, private life away from the spotlight, spending his free time with Shirley and their daughter, Serafina. The backstory of Charlie Watts is one of quiet determination and unwavering focus. He wasn't chasing fame or fortune. He was simply following his passion, one beat at a time. From the streets of post-war London to the biggest stages in the world, Charlie's journey is a testament to the power of staying true to yourself and your craft. While the world remembers him as a rock star, Charlie Watts always saw himself as just a drummer who loved jazz. And perhaps that humility is what made him truly great. Charlie Watts never sought the limelight, but his journey to becoming the backbone of one of the greatest rock bands in history is a story of quiet ambition and immense talent. It all began in the early 1960s, when London's music scene was alive with young bands experimenting with blues and rock. Charlie was already making a name for himself as a skilled jazz drummer, playing in clubs with bands like Blues Incorporated. His unique style, a blend of jazz precision and blues soul, caught the attention of Brian Jones, Mick Jagger, and Keith Richards, who were in the process of forming a band. They approached Charlie, hoping to convince him to join what would become the Rolling Stones. At first, Charlie was hesitant. Rock and roll wasn't his passion, jazz was. He was also skeptical about the band's future, knowing how uncertain the music industry could be. But there was something about the group's energy and raw talent that intrigued him. In 1963, after some convincing and a promise of steady gigs, Charlie finally agreed to join. It was a decision that would change not just his life, but the course of music history. In the early days, the band struggled to find its footing. They played small clubs, barely making enough money to get by. Charlie, ever the pragmatic one, continued working his day job as a graphic designer to pay the bills. But everything changed when they landed a residency at the Crawdaddy Club in Richmond. Their electrifying performances drew crowds and caught the attention of Andrew Loog Oldham, who became their manager. Under Oldham's guidance, the Rolling Stones signed a record deal with Decca Records, and their journey to stardom began. The band's first single, a cover of Chuck Berry's Come On, was released in 1963. While it didn't make a huge splash, it marked the beginning of their recording career. Their big break came in 1964, with their cover of It's All Over Now, which topped the UK charts. That same year, their first album was released, showcasing a raw, bluesy sound that set them apart from the polished pop acts of the time. Charlie's drumming became the heartbeat of the band. Unlike many rock drummers who focused on loud, flashy solos, Charlie brought a subtlety and rhythm that gave the music its groove. He once said, "My job is to make Keith sound good," and that he did, providing a steady foundation for the band's ever-evolving sound. As the band's popularity grew, so did their ambition. In 1965, they released I Can't Get No, Satisfaction, a song that would become their anthem and cement their place in rock history. Charlie's understated but essential drumming drove the track, proving that sometimes less is more. By the late 1960s, the Rolling Stones were no longer just a band. They were a cultural phenomenon. They had moved beyond their blues roots, experimenting with rock, psychedelia, and even country. Albums like Beggar's Banquet and Let It Bleed showcased their growth as musicians and songwriters, with Charlie's drumming adapting to every new direction. But success came at a price. The late 1960s and early 1970s were a turbulent time for the band. Brian Jones, one of their founding members, left the group in 1969 and tragically passed away shortly after. The band faced legal troubles, public criticism, and internal conflict. Through it all, Charlie remained the calm in the storm, quietly holding the band together with his steady rhythm and level-headed nature. One of the band's defining moments came in 1969 when they performed at the Altamont Free Concert. What was meant to be a celebration of music turned into a night of chaos and tragedy when violence broke out in the crowd. The incident marked the end of the idealistic 1960s and left a deep scar on the band. Despite the challenges, they pressed on, channeling their experience into their music. In the 1970s, the Rolling Stones reached new heights of success. Albums like Sticky Fingers and Exile on Main Saint are now considered masterpieces, showcasing a sound that was gritty, soulful, and uniquely their own. Charlie's drumming was a crucial part of their identity, providing the backbone for hits like Brown Sugar and Tumbling Dice. Offstage, however, Charlie struggled with the demands of fame. He wasn't interested in the rock star lifestyle of wild parties and endless tours. He valued his privacy and cherished the quiet moments with his wife, Shirley, and their daughter, Serafina. As the decades went on, the Rolling Stones proved they were more than just a band. They were a legacy. They continued to release chart-topping albums and sell out stadiums worldwide, with Charlie's drumming remaining as precise and powerful as ever. While his bandmates often grabbed headlines for their antics, Charlie stayed true to himself, earning a reputation as the band's rock, both literally and figuratively. Charlie's rise to fame wasn't about chasing glory. It was about doing what he loved, with people who shared his passion for music. He once said, "I've always thought of myself as a drummer, not a rock star." And that humility, combined with his incredible talent, is what made him one of the greatest drummers of all time. As we look back on Charlie's journey, it's clear that his success wasn't just about being in the right place at the right time. It was about his dedication to his craft, his ability to adapt, and his unwavering commitment to the music. From playing in smoky jazz clubs to performing on the world's biggest stages, Charlie Watts' rise to fame is a story of quiet determination and lasting impact. He may not have sought the spotlight, but he certainly earned his place in it. For much of his life, Charlie Watts was known as the quiet, grounded member of the Rolling Stones, a man who stayed out of the chaos that seemed to follow his bandmates. But even someone as steady as Charlie wasn't immune to challenges, both personal and professional. One of the darker periods in Charlie's life came in the 1980s, when he struggled with addiction. For a man who had always been seen as disciplined and controlled, it was a surprising and difficult chapter. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Charlie admitted that he fell into a cycle of substance abuse during a time when the band was dealing with internal tensions and creative stagnation. He described it as a period of isolation, saying, "I nearly lost my family because of my behavior." It was his wife, Shirley, who ultimately helped him confront his struggles. Their relationship, which had always been a source of strength for Charlie, became the anchor he needed to pull himself out of that dark place. He sought help, turned his focus back to his family, and managed to overcome his addiction. This chapter in his life, while painful, showed his resilience and his unwavering commitment to the people he loved. Professionally, Charlie also faced challenges as part of the Rolling Stones. The late 1960s and 1970s were a tumultuous time for the band. The death of Brian Jones, one of the founding members, was a heavy blow that left the group reeling. Charlie, ever the steady force, stepped up to help keep the band moving forward, but the loss left a mark on him. He later reflected on how difficult it was to watch someone with so much talent and potential spiral out of control. The Altamont Free Concert in 1969 was another dark chapter for the band. The event, which was supposed to be a celebration of music, ended in tragedy when a fan was killed during their performance. The chaos and violence of that night haunted the band for years, and Charlie often spoke about how it changed their perspective on fame and responsibility. Despite these challenges, Charlie rarely sought the spotlight. Even during moments of controversy, he stayed true to his personality, letting his actions speak louder than his words. But being part of one of the biggest bands in the world meant he couldn't entirely escape public scrutiny. Over the years, Charlie's reserved demeanor was often misinterpreted as aloofness, but those who knew him understood that he simply preferred a quieter, more private life. Even as the Rolling Stones weathered scandals, lawsuits, and creative disagreements, Charlie remained the glue that held the band together. While Mick Jagger and Keith Richards often clashed, Charlie had a unique ability to mediate and keep things moving. His calm presence earned him respect, not just from his bandmates, but from everyone who worked with him. One of Charlie's biggest personal challenges came toward the end of his life. In 2004, he was diagnosed with throat cancer. True to his nature, he approached the illness with quiet strength, undergoing treatment and eventually going into remission. He continued to perform with the band, showing the same dedication to his craft that had defined his entire career. Unfortunately, his health began to decline again in 2021, and he was unable to join the Rolling Stones on their planned tour. For the first time in decades, the band performed without him, a decision that was undoubtedly difficult for everyone involved. Shortly after, on August 24, 2021, Charlie Watts passed away at the age of 80. His death marked the end of an era, leaving a void not just in the band, but in the world of music. Charlie's challenges, whether personal or professional, were a testament to his resilience. He faced each struggle with the same quiet determination that made him such a beloved figure. While he rarely spoke about his darker moments, his ability to overcome them showed a depth of character that few people truly understood. It's this balance, the steady drummer with an undercurrent of vulnerability, that makes his story so compelling. In the end, Charlie's struggles didn't define him. Instead, they became part of a larger narrative about perseverance, love, and the strength it takes to remain true to yourself in the face of immense pressure. And just like his drumming, his approach to life was steady, measured, and unwavering, even when the world around him wasn't. Charlie Watts wasn't just a legendary drummer. He was also a man of refined tastes, a collector, and someone who appreciated life's subtler pleasures. His material world reflected his personality, elegant, understated, and deeply thoughtful. One of the most striking aspects of Charlie's life was his love for historic home. While many of his peers flaunted flashy mansions in Beverly Hills or sprawling estates with the latest modern designs, Charlie's taste leaned toward the timeless and classic. He and his wife Shirley made their home in a 16th century manor house in rural Devon, England. This wasn't just a property, it was a living piece of history. Surrounded by rolling green hills and serene countryside, the house was far removed from the chaotic energy of rock stardom. It was a sanctuary, a place where Charlie could escape the noise and reconnect with the simple joys of life. Inside, the home reflected Charlie and Shirley's shared love for tradition and craftsmanship. The wooden beams, stone fireplaces, and antique furniture told a story of a life built on appreciation for detail. While the house was grand, it wasn't ostentatious. It exuded warmth and comfort, just like Charlie himself. Visitors often remarked that the home felt lived in, as if every corner carried a memory. For Charlie, it wasn't about having a big house. It was about having a meaningful. Beyond his home, Charlie had a deep passion for collecting. His love for jazz extended beyond music. He also collected vintage jazz memorabilia, from rare records to posters and instruments. His collection wasn't just for display, it was a personal treasure trove that reflected his respect for the art form that inspired him as a young drummer. In one interview, he mentioned how his collection reminded him of why he started playing in the first place. It was a connection to his roots, a way to stay grounded in the music that shaped him. But jazz wasn't Charlie's only passion. He was also an avid collector of vintage cars. The twist? Charlie didn't actually drive. Despite owning an impressive collection of classic cars, he never had a driver's license. For him, the cars weren't about utility. They were about beauty and craftsmanship. He loved the design, the history, and the artistry of each vehicle. His garage was more like a museum, filled with pristine examples of automotive history. From vintage Bugattis to classic Rolls-Royces, each car was a reflection of his appreciation for timeless elegance. Charlie's wardrobe was another window into his world. While rock stars are often associated with wild fashion, Charlie's style was the opposite, sophisticated and impeccably tailored. He was known for his love of Savile Row suits, often joking that he spent more money on clothes than on anything else. His bandmates would often tease him for showing up to rehearsals in perfectly pressed suits while they were in jeans and t-shirts. But for Charlie, dressing well was a sign of respect for himself, for his bandmates, and for the audience. It was another way he set himself apart from the typical image of a rock star. Despite his wealth and success, Charlie's lifestyle remained remarkably grounded. He and Shirley were devoted to their animals, raising Arabian horses on their estate. Caring for the horses wasn't just a hobby. It was a way for Charlie to find peace and purpose outside of music. He loved the routine, the quiet moments spent in the stables, and the connection he felt to nature. It was a world away from the flashing lights of stadium. And that's exactly how Charlie liked it. Even in the way he spent his free time, Charlie's personality shone through. While his bandmates were often photographed at parties or on extravagant vacation, Charlie preferred the quiet life. He loved sketching, a hobby he had carried with him since childhood. Whether it was drawing his bandmates during downtime on tour or sketching ideas inspired by his surroundings, art was another way Charlie expressed himself. Charlie Watts's world was a reflection of who he was: graceful, deliberate, and deeply authentic. His possessions and lifestyle choices weren't about status or showing off. They were about surrounding himself with things that brought him joy and meaning. From his historic home in the countryside to his cherished collections, every detail of his life told a story of a man who valued quality over quantity, tradition over trends, and substance over flash. Through his material world, we see a glimpse of the Charlie that many fans never knew. A quiet collector, a lover of history, and a man who found beauty in the simple, timeless things. It's a reminder that even in the loud, chaotic world of rock and roll, Charlie Watts remained true to himself, a man of rhythm, refinement, and remarkable depth. Charlie Watts was never the loudest voice in the room, and he didn't have to be. His legacy lies not an attention-grabbing headline, but in the subtle power of his presence. He was the heartbeat of the Rolling Stones, both on stage and off, a steady, reliable force in a world that often thrived on chaos. But Charlie's impact goes far beyond the music he played. It's about how he lived his life, how he carried himself, and the example he set for generations to come. What made Charlie Watts unique was his refusal to conform to the stereotypical image of a rock star. While others sought fame and indulged in the excesses of their success, Charlie stayed grounded. He didn't crave the spotlight. He let his music speak for itself. He showed that you don't have to be loud or flashy to make an impact. Sometimes, quiet consistency is what leaves the biggest mark. His drumming style was a reflection of his personality, precise, understated, and perfectly in sync with the moment. He wasn't about long, showy solos or over-the-top performances. Instead, he focused on what the music needed, crafting rhythms that gave the band its groove and defined their sound. Whether it was the driving beat of Satisfaction or the playful rhythm of Honky Tonk Women, Charlie's drumming wasn't just the foundation. It was the soul of the song. Beyond his music, Charlie's legacy is also about integrity. He stayed true to his values in a world that often rewarded excess and self-indulgence. He remained loyal to his wife, Shirley, for nearly 60 years, a rare feat in any world, let alone rock and roll. He kept his private life private, valuing family and quiet moments over parties and fame. His life was proof that success doesn't have to change who you are. Charlie also left behind a legacy of passion and artistry. His love for jazz and his dedication to his craft inspired countless musicians. He wasn't just a drummer. He was a student of music, constantly learning and refining his skills. Through his collections, his art, and his performances, Charlie showed what it means to truly love what you do. His passing in 2021 marked the end of an era, but his influence lives on. The Rolling Stones continue to play his music, ensuring that his rhythms will echo for generations. Fans remember him not just as a member of one of the greatest bands in history, but as a man who embodied grace, humility, and quiet strength. Charlie Watts' story is worth telling because it's a reminder that greatness doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes it's found in the steady beat of someone who knows exactly who they are. His life is a testament to the power of staying true to yourself, of valuing the things that really matter, and of leaving behind a legacy that resonates far beyond your time. In the end, Charlie Watts was more than just a drummer. He was a symbol of authenticity in a world that often prizes spectacle. And that's what makes his story unforgettable.